She was 9 weeks pregnant. Her 2 toddlers were asleep down the hall, and she had no idea her husband had already decided she wasn't going to make it through the night. When he called 911 a few hours later, had already decided what story he was going to tell. To understand what happened on the night of October 7th, 2024, you first need to understand who Christa Bauer was. She was born on February 7th, 1986, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the eldest of 4 daughters. Her parents always said she started her caregiving career the day her younger sisters arrived, instinctively taking on the role of protector, nurturer, eldest. It was just who she was. Christa studied at Clemson University, where she joined Alpha Chi Omega and fell in love with Tiger football. She later earned her doctorate in physical therapy from the University of Pittsburgh and became a board-certified clinical specialist in cardiovascular and pulmonary rehabilitation. She was brilliant, she was dedicated, and she had an almost supernatural ability to connect with people. Patients, students, strangers who never stayed strangers for long. In 2014, she settled in Houston, Texas, where she landed what her friends called her dream job at Memorial Hermann Hospital in the Texas Medical Center. She worked with the sickest patients, people with failing hearts and broken lungs, and she developed protocols to improve their mobility, sometimes holding their hands just to let them know someone was there. She later became an adjunct professor at the University of Texas Medical Branch and at Pittsburgh, mentoring the next generation of physical therapists with the same fierce care she brought to everything she did. She adopted Riggs, a golden retriever who she called her first child. She became president of the Houston Clemson Club. She organized watch parties and was known, affectionately, for making the bad luck fans leave when the game was on the line. And then she met Lee Gilley. The two had known each other for roughly a decade before things turned romantic. According to friends, it was love after one date. They married on January 28th, 2017. Within a few years, they had 2 young children, toddlers, barely old enough to understand the world around them. And by the autumn of 2024, Christa was pregnant again. 9 weeks along, carrying what would have been the couple's 3rd child. Looking back now, people who knew them say there were things they didn't know, things that were quietly unraveling behind closed doors. But on the surface, Christa Bauer Gilley was 38 years old, accomplished, loved, and full of life. She had no idea what was coming. At approximately 11:30 on the night of October 7th, 2024, a 911 call came into Houston dispatchers from a home on Alston Street in the Houston Heights neighborhood, an area about 4 miles northwest of downtown. The caller was Lee Gilley. He was 38 years old, a self-employed software consultant, and he was telling the operator that his pregnant wife was not responding. He said he had found her unresponsive. He said she had overdosed. He said he was performing CPR. Houston Fire Department medics arrived and transported Christa to Memorial Hermann Greater Heights Hospital. Their 2 small children were in the home at the time. Officers arrived at the Alston Street address and took Lee Gilley in for questioning. Christa was pronounced dead approximately 3 hours after arriving at the hospital. She was 38 years old. But it was what hospital staff found when they examined her that changed everything. There was bruising on her face. There was trauma visible around her neck. These were not the marks of a drug overdose. These were the marks of violence. Investigators were notified immediately. On October 9th, the Harris County Institute of Forensic Sciences completed the autopsy. The ruling was unambiguous. Christa Bauer Gilley had died from compression of the neck and upper back. Strangulation. The manner of death was ruled a homicide. The report also confirmed that she had been approximately 8 to 9 weeks pregnant at the time of her death. There was now a murder investigation, and the husband had already told police a story that the evidence said was a lie. When investigators pressed Lee Gilley, his account began to collapse almost immediately. He had initially told police that Christa committed suicide by overdose, But when confronted with the physical evidence, the bruising, the trauma to her neck, the medical examiner's findings, he shifted. He acknowledged that his wife was not suicidal. He acknowledged that she was not a drug user. He admitted the two had been arguing earlier that evening. His new version of events was this. They argued, he went to bed, and he woke up to find her unconscious. But the medical examiner had already told a different story. You do not die from compression of the neck in your sleep. You do not bruise your own face. You do not strangle yourself. Someone had put their hands on Christa Bauer Gilley and pressed down until she stopped breathing. And the only other adult in that house that night was her husband. On October 11th, 2024, 4 days after Christa's death, a warrant was issued for Lee Gilley's arrest on charges of capital murder. The charge covered both Christa's death and the death of their unborn child. Under Texas law, capital murder carries the possibility of the death penalty. He was booked into the Harris County Jail. A contentious bond hearing followed. Prosecutors argued for a $3 million bond, calling Gilley a flight risk. His defense attorneys pushed back, requesting $200,000. The judge settled on $1 million. Lee Gilley posted it, walked out of custody, and was fitted with a GPS ankle monitor. Court-ordered conditions forbade him from going within 200 feet of the marital home and from having contact with his children. The two toddlers had been placed in the care of Christa's parents, Sharon and Christopher Bauer, and so the Bauer family, already shattered by the loss of their daughter, now had to wait. Wait for a trial. Wait for a verdict. Wait for some version of justice that felt impossibly far away. Justice felt like it was finally closing in. But Lee Gilley had been one step ahead the whole time. As investigators continued building their case over the following months, a fuller picture of Lee Gilley began to emerge. Court filings revealed that prosecutors intended to introduce evidence of a 2023 extramarital affair, a woman in California with whom Gilley had allegedly been involved before Christa's death. The relationship had not ended there. During the spring of 2025, while out on bond for his pregnant wife's murder, Gilley allegedly continued communicating with the same woman across multiple apps and by phone, and the topic of those conversations, according to prosecutors, was not innocent. He had allegedly been discussing plans to flee. To Mexico, to other countries, he had been thinking about how to disappear. There was also testimony from child custody proceedings that shortly after police questioned Gilley in October 2024, he had told relatives he was considering leaving the country with the children. His defense attorneys called those allegations categorically false. But the pattern prosecutors were painting was one of a man who had never fully committed to facing what was coming. Meanwhile, the legal process ground forward. A grand jury indicted Gilley on the capital murder charge. A trial date was eventually set, May 29, 2026, later adjusted to June 5, 2026, before Judge Peyton Peebles in the 497th District Court of Harris County. His defense team, led by Dick DeGuerin, one of Texas's most storied criminal defense attorneys, a man who had previously represented Robert Durst and cult leader David Koresh, had been preparing for trial for well over a year. DeGuerin gave interviews. He went on television. He told People magazine that he had a strong defense ready. He told reporters that his client had not strangled his wife. He said they believed Christa had died from a rare pre-existing medical condition, hemoglobin anemia, whose physiological symptoms, he claimed, could mirror those of strangulation. It was a bold strategy, and they were weeks away from presenting it in court. But Lee Gilley had other plans. On the evening of Friday, May 1st, 2026, a monitoring alert fired. Lee Gilley's GPS ankle monitor registered a strap tamper event. Harris County Pretrial Services tried to reach him by phone. He didn't answer. The alert stayed active through the weekend. By Monday morning, it was clear. The monitor had not malfunctioned. He had cut it off himself. He was gone. When the news hit the courthouse, It sent shockwaves through the legal proceedings. A judge revoked the $1 million bond. An arrest warrant was issued. Law enforcement began retracing his steps, and what they found was methodical, deliberate. The escape of a man who had been planning this for a very long time. Investigators determined that Gilley had travelled from Texas to Canada. The exact method of that crossing has never been publicly explained. From Canada, he boarded an Air Canada flight bound for Milan, Italy. He was not travelling as Lee Gilley. He was travelling under the name Lejeune Jean-Luc Olivier, carrying a Belgian passport and Belgian identification documents. Both the passport and the documents were forged. Italian border police at Milan's Malpensa airport did not believe the documents. They pulled him aside. They questioned him. And under that questioning, something shifted. He stopped pretending. He told the officers his real name. He told them he was awaiting trial in the United States for the murder of his wife. He told them he was being wrongfully prosecuted. He told them he wanted asylum. He was taken into immigration custody. He was not admitted to Italy. He had travelled 5,000 miles, forged documents, assumed a fake identity, crossed an international border undetected, and been stopped in an airport because an Italian border officer didn't buy the paperwork. The truth was about to come out, and it was worse than anyone imagined. On May 11, 2026, Lee Gilley appeared before Turin Court of Appeals Judge Marta Sturpos. He was wearing jeans and a white t-shirt. His Italian defense attorney, Monica Grosso, was by his side. Judge Sturpos asked whether Gilley consented to extradition to the United States. He said, "I do not consent." Then, without being prompted, he kept talking. He told the court, "My wife is dead, and they wrongly blamed me. That is why I no longer have faith in the justice system. I am innocent. I did not kill my wife. The only crime I committed was fleeing. I fled to avoid being killed." He told the Italian judge that he had chosen Italy specifically from the very beginning of his plan. He cited the lifestyle, the culture, the international protections, the chance at a fair trial. He said he deserved a fresh start in a country that had abolished the death penalty. It was a remarkable statement from a man whose own defense attorney, back in Houston, had been advising him to waive extradition and return immediately. De Guerin said, "What I can assume is that he got really scared." He added, "When you flee, it can be taken as consciousness of guilt. I'm concerned about that." But there was another dimension to Gilley's choice of Italy that was quietly devastating to those who knew Christa. Italy was a country she had loved. She had studied abroad there during college. She had memories there. And now her husband, accused of strangling her to death while she carried their third child, was claiming the country she adored as his sanctuary. What Lee Gilley may or may not have understood is that his flight to Italy had not saved him. It had simply replaced one legal nightmare with another. The United States and Italy have had a formal extradition treaty since 1983. Under that treaty, the two countries regularly surrender accused criminals to each other. But Italian law contains an absolute bar. Italy will not extradite any person to a country where they may face the death penalty. It is not a guideline. It is a hard legal wall. And Lee Gilley was charged with capital murder in Texas, where the death penalty is not only available, it is used. Texas executed 5 people in 2025 alone. After validating Gilley's arrest, the Italian court gave the United States a window of approximately 45 days, running from May 8th to roughly June 22nd, 2026, to file a formal extradition packet. If the US failed to file by that deadline, Italian law would require Gilley's release from extradition custody. But the extradition packet could not simply be filed. Italian authorities needed written assurance that the United States would not seek the death penalty. Without that assurance, the formal request would be blocked. And the Harris County District Attorney's Office had not given that assurance. They declined to comment, citing the May 8th gag order. Meanwhile, Italian prosecutors in Milan had opened a parallel criminal case against Gilley for entering the country on forged documents, a charge that, if it resulted in a conviction, could delay any surrender to the United States by years. Every new lead seemed to pull them deeper into the nightmare. In mid-May 2026, 2 of his 3 American defense attorneys filed sealed motions to withdraw from the case. On May 21st, Judge Peebles formally postponed the trial indefinitely. Prosecutors confirmed they were still working with the Department of Justice to finalize extradition paperwork that had not yet been submitted to Italian authorities. As of this recording, Lee Gilley sits in a holding facility in Milan. His trial has no date. His defense team is in disarray, and the clock is ticking. While lawyers argued across 2 continents, 2 small children woke up every morning without their mother. Christa's son and daughter had been placed with her parents, Sharon and Christopher Bauer. During custody hearings, the Bauer's attorney suggested Gilley may have had help escaping. His brother Matt denied it, appearing by video from North Carolina. He confirmed the last text he received from Lee came on May 1st, the day the monitor was cut. The message said to give hugs to the kids. The judge ruled in favor of the Bauers. Friends launched a GoFundMe that raised over $100,000 toward covering legal, travel, and childcare costs, so the family could focus on surrounding those children with love. Her name will forever be a reminder of what can happen behind closed doors in a house that looks perfectly ordinary from the outside. The man accused of strangling her to death while she carried their unborn child is sitting in an Italian jail, fighting extradition, betting that 2 legal systems on opposite sides of the world can't agree on how to bring him home. But what is already clear is this. Christa was 38 years old, 9 weeks pregnant, and by every account, one of the most genuinely caring people anyone around her had ever known. She did not die the way her husband said she did, and the world she left behind, her children, her parents, her friends, is still waiting for justice to find its way to her.